Hey guys, today we are starting a really big and very important, probably biggest on the test. Not probably, it is. It's the biggest on the AP exam. That's why we save it for last. And it's called Cognition. So it says here at the bottom, memory, thinking, language, but there's also intelligence that we're going to talk about last, which is part of cognition. They used to have intelligence as its own separate unit, but this year is the first year that they decided to teach intelligence with cognition. I haven't married those two PowerPoints together. They're going to be separate, but just know that that is all within the same unit. So on Google Classroom, you will have something that looks like this. It is just a little, and it should, there's nothing, like mine has something on the back, but it shouldn't have anything on the back. But this is just to help, it's a little flow chart for memory. So it's the very first part of cognition, memory, and helps just get our thoughts in order because there's a lot of terms and they kind of, some of them sound the same, some of them look the same. So here's just to help you with organizing your notes for memory in the cognition unit. So let's just get started. The thing about memory is, like, what it is learning over time. So the last unit we just talked about was learning, classical conditioning and operant conditioning and observational learning. That was the last unit. Well, if you keep that learning in your brain over time, that's memory. So first things first, if you are fans of The Office or if you've ever seen The Office, I want you just in your head list off of all the main characters. If you are not familiar with The Office, maybe list all of the Seven Dwarves or Santa's reindeer, something like that. Might be hard to do it, but that is an example of recall. Recall is just pulling information out of your head. What's a whole lot easier is recognition. So if I was to show you, I don't have a picture of Santa's reindeer and I don't have a picture of this, the Seven Dwarves, but I do have a picture of the cast of The Office, and it's a whole lot easier to access your memory if it is a recognition question versus a recall question. So recall on a test would be like FRQ, it'd be short answer, fill in the blank without a word bank. Recognition, though, is generally easier. Multiple choice, true, false, matching. Those are typically easier questions, and our ability to recall information without any word bank or hint does decline with age. Around 60, 70, your ability to recall quickly does decline with age, and that's called fluid intelligence, is how fast you can get access to the information in your head, how quickly you can process information. That's fluid intelligence because it flows, fluid. While crystallized intelligence is all of your information stored throughout your entire life. And so that's like knowing definitions of words and current events and history and everything that you've ever read or heard is your crystallized intelligence. And that grows with age. That doesn't go down, that grows. So that's why older people know more, because they've had more life experience and they've read more, they've been around longer. So their crystallized intelligence, it's much more than yours. But their fluid intelligence, how fast they can think of that name from that story, how fast they remember the name of that book, that might go down with age. But all of their accumulated knowledge, their crystallized intelligence, high. Their fluid intelligence does decline, though. And recall, the ability to recall, does decline with age. Recognition stays pretty stable, though, throughout the course of your life. So this 3-step process of memory is in the very first 3 blanks. So it says 1, 2, and 3 across here. So you can either print this out if you have access to a printer, or you can get like a sheet of paper like this and just copy this down, or set your notes up this way if you have no way to print it out. But if we ever get back to school, something that looks similar to this would be part of like a binder check. So the memory works in 3 stages: encoding, storage, and retrieval. So that first blank is going to be encoding, storage, and retrieval over here. Encoding is just getting that information into our brains, getting it in. And we'll talk about different ways we can encode here in a little bit. And that's why there's like two little drop-down boxes right here, because there are different ways to encode. But just in general, encoding information means getting that into your brain. Storage is obviously keeping it into your brain. And there's different ways we can store things, whether it's short-term memory or long-term memory, but we'll get there. And then retrieval is getting that information back out. Because, what's the point of memory if you can store it and like you can encode it and you can store it, but then you can never get that information back out? Yeah, that's going to be a retrieval error. So it's getting the information and keeping it in and getting the information back out. So let's talk more about that first part, that encoding box, which was right here. There's two ways that we can get information into our brain. The first way is called effortful encoding. It requires attention. It requires effort. This is studying. When you are flashcarding yourself or something, or you're paying attention in class, right now, if you are paying attention to what I'm saying, you're trying to effortfully encode something. You are using effort to get something into your brain. It requires rehearsal. Rehearsal is just the AP term and psychology term for studying. Rehearsal, studying, those are the same thing. And it requires conscious effort, like to be aware, like I am going to get this into my head. Versus automatic, just happens. You didn't even know that you knew that. It's not like you studied that somewhere. You just know it. Like, I don't know, maybe you didn't study your mom's favorite color, but you just know it. It's not like you went home and flashcarded your mom's favorite color and your dad's favorite color. It's just something that you know. My dad's favorite color is red. My mom's favorite color is purple. The end. So I think it's actually blue, but maybe I didn't encode it all that well. But knowing the definition of this is a pen. Knowing the name and the definition of pen is something that you just know. It's not like as a kid you studied and flashcarded pen. You just know what it is. Party facts are automatically, trivia typically automatically encoded. Like, does anyone know who brought chewing gum to the United States first? Like, what person, historical figure, brought chewing gum into the United States? Santa Anna. Santa Anna brought chewing gum into the United States. The more you know. Okay, so still with encoding. And so there's no boxes for these things I'm about to say, but if you want to write it next to encoding, or if you want to write it on the back of the page, like under more encoding, it's just more ways to get it into our brain. So this guy, Hermann Ebbinghaus, big name in memory. He was the very first person that studied memory, and he studied on himself. So what he did, weird story, is that he rented a hotel room in Paris at like the base of the Eiffel Tower, and he locked himself in his hotel room for a week. And he tried to memorize nonsense syllables, not like cat and dog, because those have pictures in our head and we can make up stories, but nonsense syllables that have no meaning, like tub and zov, gek and wave. And he came up with this brilliant idea. You'll never guess what it is. He realized that the amount remembered depends on how long he spent learning it. Like, let me say that again. The more he studied, the more he remembered, and the less he studied, the less he remembered. Wow. That's incredible new information that I've never thought of before. Obviously, this is, big brain time. This is pretty obvious. But, back then it's like, how do we know more things? Well, if you study more, then you'll know more. But yeah, the amount of time he studied, the more he remembered. And he came up with this curve of forgetting. And, this is like not just a cartoon in my PowerPoint. This is an actual term. Oh, here. There he is, Hermann Ebbinghaus. And here I am back. So he basically says, as soon as you stop studying, like as soon as you close your book, put it away, put the flashcards down, you immediately start to forget. Immediately. Like it's something within like the first second. I think it's like 30% is gone. And it's like, wow, that's a decent amount of information gone immediately. Well, here's the thing. He said, if you space out your studying, meaning like don't cram, because this guy right down here, this is cramming the night before and then sleeping and then taking the test. If you space out your studying and studying a little bit one day, a little bit the next, a little bit the day after that, not only do you retain more information, but it's because the curve of forgetting changes slope. Like if you cram, it's like immediately you're going to like lose 30 to 40% of the information when you go to bed. But if you like study and space out your studying, it's like 30% and then 10% and then 5%. And then basically then it goes into your long-term memory and you probably won't forget it. But the spacing out effect just basically means cramming doesn't work. Space out your studying and you will retain more information. Take that from me. Like I didn't even study in high school. Like, honestly, I was in on-level classes and like I was a B student. Like I'm shooting for an 82. I get an 82, I am solid, which honestly, it's really not that hard to do in high school. Not AP, DC. Those are difficult classes to get A's and B's in, but on level, I mean, whatever. So I wasn't until college that I like you have to really study because it's no joke. College is no joke. And I didn't know how to study. So I would cram. And my very first tests in like economics in college were abysmal, like bad, like failing with a capital F. I mean, it was bad. And I was looking at the point of like, this, I'm going to fail out of college and this is not good. And then I realized, you know what? I can't fail. My parents would kill me, number one. And I've never failed anything in my life. So I am going to space out my studying. And so if I knew I had a test on Friday, I would study a little bit. I would basically gather my materials to study on a Monday. Study a lot on Tuesday, a lot on Wednesday, study a medium amount on Thursday, but and then a Friday morning, glance over my notes, just glance. I basically was not studying the day of the test. A lot of people do. And that's what I was doing before. And I would walk in and I made really good grades my last 2 years in college because I figured out the spacing effect. Like I went going from, oh my gosh, I'm basically like going to fail economics, my major, to like Dean's List, the last several semesters in college. And so it's not that I'm smart. It's not that I did work harder, but I learned that cramming does not work. Science backs me up here. It's not just my little anecdote. It is fact. It is true. So just to let you guys know. So a couple things about getting things into our head and things not getting into our head. Remember, because we're all still talking about encoding, which is getting information into our brain. The serial position effect. This just basically means that if you have a list, let's say you're going to the grocery store and you're going to make a list of 10 things, 15 things that you need at the grocery store. On that list, what do you think you'd remember the most? Do you think you remember the beginning, middle, or end the most? Well, if you said beginning or end, you're right. The serial position effect says if there's a list, we remember the very first things, and the primary, the very beginning of the list, the primary part of the list, and the most recent things, the last part of the list. But it's the middle that we're going to forget. So the serial position effects is basically in a list, you tend to forget what's ever in the middle. So it could be a list of groceries. It could be a string of digits. It could be like you meet 15 people at a party. You might remember the first couple people that you met. You might remember their names and the last few people that you met, but the people that you met in the middle of the party, probably not going to remember their names very well. Okay, so still talking about encoding, what's the best way to get information into our head? So there's 3 different ways.
I'm gonna say hello.
Okay, you can say hello. No one's watching right now. This is a video for later. But you can say hello.
Hello, 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 hello.
Okay, thank you, bud. Good one.
Oh, man. There's June bugs in here.
There's one dead June bug. I'll pick it up later. I saw it earlier. Nothing but the best. All right, bye, bud. Okay, so how do you get things into your brain? If you're trying to study, what's the best way to study? So there's semantic encoding, acoustic encoding, and visual encoding. So semantic encoding is focusing on the meaning behind things. Like, this happens a lot in economics. I will say something like, well, if the price of things changes, goes down, let's say, what happens to this, that, and the other? And they're like, well, can I just memorize that if this were to go up, this other thing goes down? It's like, yeah, you can memorize that. But if you don't know why, if you don't know the meaning behind why, if this changes, this other thing changes, you're not going to do well. They're like, well, I'll just memorize it. Well, turns out when you memorize it and you memorize a lot of different things like that, they get confused. But if you remember the meaning, the reason behind things, you're more likely to get it right. Like just looking at the term serial position effect. Forget the fact that, forget the way that those words look. Forget the way that it sounds, serial position effect. You're not going to be able to do well if you're just memorizing on, I think it started with an S, I think. And maybe it had a P, I don't even know. But if you just remember serial, a serial's a list. Like a serial killer has a list of people that they've killed. Position, the position in a list has an effect of memory, because that's what this unit is. And so think about the meaning behind those words. Serial position, the position of a word in a list is going to affect your memory. So that's going to be very helpful if you focus on the meaning of the words. The other ways I said is acoustic and visual. Acoustic is focusing on the sounds of words. Oh, it sounded like, cereal sounds like a box. Box I buy at a store. Store, I list for a store. It's like that. It's kind of drawn out. I mean, it helps some people, and visual's literally the worst way. If you remember, well, I think it had these letters in it, and I think the word was capitalized, and I'm pretty sure it ended with an S. You're not going to do very well at knowing what that word is, much less knowing what that word means, just by focusing on the pictures of the visual look of the word. I've had a student, I remember last year, I think, he said, God, I try to visually encode for everything. For every term in class, I try to just focus on, I try to memorize what the word looks like, how many letters are in the word, and what does it start with, and if there's any INGs or whatever. That's the worst way to encode. He's like, yeah, I know, I fail everything. It's like, well, there you go. If you try to focus on the meaning of it, make a little story and make it meaningful to you, it works the best. And that's hopefully what teachers do. Teachers try to make their content meaningful so they know why you're doing it as opposed to what you're doing. Because if you know the why, much more likely to enjoy the class, to understand it, and to appreciate it. Okay, so that's where we're stopping today. Tomorrow, we're going to work on this long thing and fill in more of these boxes. But right now, we just talked about encoding. We'll work on storage a little bit later and retrieval a little bit last. But encoding is really what we talked about today in terms of memory. Tomorrow, we talk about the Elkin-Schifrin 3-stage processing model of memory, and we'll fill out some more boxes. But hopefully everyone's having a good Monday. Grades start soon. I believe that we are going to start taking grades at the end of the week. So very excited. I will be posting a this thing once it pops up. I'll be posting this picture right here in Google Classroom, so you'll be able to, maybe you can even type into it. That might be good. And then print it out. That might be good. But, for memory's sake, you actually memorize a whole lot better when you handwrite it versus typing, just to let you know. So if you're going to try to use memory to help you out here, write it down. Don't just type it. You'll remember it less. All right. Have a good day, guys. Bye.